The courthouse in a small town in Ohio was quiet that morning. It wasn't usually busy, but today felt different. There was an air of anticipation hanging over the place, though no one could quite put their finger on why. Maybe it was the weather. Gray clouds loomed outside, casting long shadows through the tall windows. Or maybe it was just the kind of uneasy feeling people get when something unusual is about to happen. Matthew Carter sat in the defendant's chair, his hands resting loosely on his knees. He looked calm, almost too calm for someone facing charges in court. His clothes weren't what you'd expect in such a setting. Faded blue jeans, scuffed boots, and a leather jacket that had seen better days. His dark hair was messy, like he hadn't bothered combing it after waking up. But his eyes, that's what caught your attention. They were sharp, focused, as if he were studying every detail of the room while pretending not to care. The judge hadn't arrived yet, but the courtroom was already filling up, already. A few curious locals had come to watch the proceedings, along with lawyers, clerks, and reporters scribbling notes in the back rows. Everyone waited patiently as the minutes ticked by. Then the door opened, and Judge Eleanor Grayson walked in. She was a woman in her late 50s with short gray hair and glasses perched on her nose. Her black robe billowed slightly as she moved toward the bench, her steps deliberate and confident. "All rise," called the bailiff, his voice echoing off the walls. One by one, people stood. Chairs scraped against the floor, and murmurs died down, all except for Matthew. He stayed seated, his gaze fixed somewhere near the floor. No one noticed at first. They were all busy standing. But then someone did. A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by whispers. What was this man doing? Why wasn't he getting up? Judge Grayson paused mid-step, her brow furrowing. She glanced at Matthew, then at the bailiff, who gave a slight shrug. This wasn't normal behavior. Not here, not in her courtroom. With a flick of her hand, she motioned for everyone to sit again. When the room settled, she leaned forward, her expression hardening. "Mr. Carter," she said, her tone firm but controlled. "Is there a reason you refuse to stand?" Matthew didn't answer right away. He seemed lost in thought, staring at the same spot on the floor as before. Then, slowly, he raised his head. His voice was steady when he spoke, though quieter than most expected. "I can't." "You can't," Judge Grayson repeated, leaning back slightly. Her patience was wearing thin. "Explain yourself." For a moment, Matthew hesitated. The courtroom was silent now, every eye on him. You could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Finally, he spoke again. "Because I'm not who you think I am." Those words hung in the air, like smoke. For a second, no one moved. No one even breathed. Then the murmurs started again, louder this time. People exchanged glances, trying to make sense of what they'd just heard. Was this some kind of joke, a protest? Or was Matthew Carter really implying something else? Judge Grayson tapped her gavel lightly against the bench, calling for order. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice colder now. "This is a court of law. If you have something to say it clearly. Otherwise, I will hold you in contempt." Matthew's jaw tightened. He looked directly at the judge, his earlier calm replaced by something harder, more resolute. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he said. "But standing would prove my point, and that's not something I'm willing to risk." Now the whispers turned into full-blown chatter. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, craning their necks to get a better look at the man who dared defy the judge so openly. Even the lawyers looked baffled, flipping through papers as if searching for answers they wouldn't find there. "What do you mean, you prove your point?" Judge Grayson demanded. Her patience was officially gone. "Are you suggesting that standing would somehow reveal something about you?" Matthew nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Exactly." The judge stared at him for a long moment, weighing her options. Whatever game this man was playing, it needed to stop, and fast. Courts operated on rules, traditions, and respect for authority, and Matthew Carter was breaking all three. "Bailiff," she said sharply, "detain Mr. Carter until he decides to cooperate. We'll continue this matter later." Two officers stepped forward, moving toward Matthew. He didn't resist as they led him away, nor did he say another word. But as he passed through the doorway, he glanced back at the judge. There was something in his eyes, something that made Judge Grayson shiver despite herself. Once Matthew was gone, the courtroom erupted into chaos. People talked over each other, speculating wildly about what had just happened. Some thought he was mentally unstable. Others believed he was staging a political statement. A few even joked that he might be an alien or a spy. Laughter broke out, briefly, but it was nervous laughter, the kind that comes when people don't know whether to take something seriously. Among the crowd was Rachel Meyer, a young journalist covering local news for a small paper. She had been sent to the courthouse expecting a dull day of routine cases, but now she found herself gripping her notebook tightly, her pen hovering above the page. This story, whatever it was bigger than anything she'd covered before, and she intended to get to the bottom of it. As the judge dismissed the courtroom, Rachel lingered, watching as Judge Grayson disappeared into her chambers. Something about the way the older woman had reacted to Matthew's words stuck with her. It wasn't just anger or frustration. It was fear. Real, genuine fear. Whatever Matthew knew, or claimed to know, it had rattled the judge deeply. Rachel decided then and there that she wouldn't leave until she had answers. She approached one of the bailiffs, flashing her press badge and asking politely if she could speak to Matthew. The bailiff shook his head firmly. "Not today," he said. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow, Rachel thought. That would have to be soon enough. For now, she had plenty to work with. Strange behavior, cryptic statements, and a growing sense that nothing about this case was ordinary. As she left the courthouse, the gray clouds outside seemed darker than ever. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the horizon. Back inside, Judge Grayson sat alone in her chambers, staring at the empty seat where Matthew had been moments ago. His words echoed in her mind. "I'm not who you think I am." She tried to shake them off, telling herself it was nonsense, theatrics designed to disrupt the court. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the nagging doubt creeping into her thoughts. Who was Matthew Carter, and why did his presence feel so wrong? After being detained, Matthew Carter was taken to a small holding cell in the basement of the courthouse. It wasn't much, a bare room with concrete walls, a hard bench bolted to the floor, and a single flickering fluorescent light hanging from the ceiling. The air smelled faintly of dampness and old metal, but Matthew didn't seem bothered by any of it. He sat quietly on the bench, his elbows resting on his knees, staring at the floor as if lost in thought. Outside the cell, things were far from quiet. Word of Matthew's defiance had spread quickly through the courthouse, drawing attention from reporters, lawyers, and curious onlookers. Among them was Rachel Meyer, the young journalist who couldn't stop thinking about what she'd witnessed earlier. Something about Matthew's words, his refusal to stand, his cryptic explanation, had stuck with her. She knew there was more to this story than met the eye, and she was determined to find out what it was. Rachel approached the guard stationed outside the holding area. He was a tall man with broad shoulders, wearing a neatly pressed uniform. His name tag read Officer Peterson. Rachel flashed him a polite smile and held up her press badge. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm with the local paper. I'd like to speak to the man they brought in earlier, Matthew Carter." Peterson frowned, shaking his head. "Sorry, miss. No visitors allowed. Orders from upstairs." Rachel nodded, pretending to accept his answer. But she didn't give up that easily. Lowering her voice, she leaned closer. "Look, Officer Peterson, I understand protocol. But this isn't just some routine case, is it? This guy caused a scene in open court. People are talking, they want answers. If I can get his side of the story, it might help clear things up." The guard hesitated, glancing toward the cell. Then he sighed. "Fine, 5 minutes, that's all you get, and don't tell anyone I let you in." "Thank you," Rachel said quickly, stepping past him before he could change his mind. Inside the cell, Matthew looked up as Rachel entered. His expression didn't change. He didn't look surprised or annoyed, just calm, as if he'd been expecting her. Rachel pulled the heavy metal door shut behind her and took a cautious step forward. "Hi," she began, My name's Rachel Meyer. I'm a reporter. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Matthew studied her for a moment, then nodded. Go ahead. Rachel sat down on the edge of the bench across from him, opening her notebook and clicking her pen. Okay, she said. First off, why did you refuse to stand in court today? Most people would have just followed the rules, even if they didn't agree with them. Matthew tilted his head slightly, as if considering how to answer. Because standing would have shown everyone something I'm not ready to explain yet, he said finally. That sounds pretty vague, Rachel admitted. Can you be more specific? What exactly would it have shown? Matthew hesitated. For the first time since she'd met him, he seemed unsure. It's complicated, he said, and dangerous. Not just for me, for everyone else too. Rachel frowned, jotting down notes. Dangerous how? Are you saying you're involved in something illegal? Or is it something else entirely? It's not illegal, Matthew replied. At least not in the way you're thinking. Let's just say, I'm not exactly human. Rachel froze, her pen hovering above the page. Had she heard him correctly? She stared at him, searching his face for any sign that he was joking, but he looked completely serious. Not human? She repeated slowly. What does that mean? Matthew shrugged. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me, Rachel said, leaning forward. This is your chance to tell your side of the story. Whatever it is, I'll listen. Matthew sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, he said, but remember, you asked for it. He went on to explain that years ago he had been abducted by an unknown species. They weren't from Earth, they came from somewhere else, somewhere beyond human understanding. During his time with them, he had been altered, changed. When they returned him to Earth, he came back with abilities no ordinary person could possess. Abilities that made him different and potentially dangerous. Rachel listened intently, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to dismiss his story as crazy talk, but another part of her couldn't ignore the sincerity in his voice. So when you said standing would prove your point? She trailed off, letting the question hang in the air. Matthew nodded. Exactly. Standing activates certain changes within me. Changes that aren't easy to hide. And trust me, the less people know about that, the better. Rachel scribbled furiously in her notebook, trying to keep up. If what you're saying is true, then why come forward now? Why risk exposing yourself like this? I didn't plan to, Matthew admitted. But sometimes these things happen whether we want them to or not. All I can do is try to control the damage. Before Rachel could ask another question, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Officer Peterson appeared at the door, frowning. Time's up, he said firmly. Rachel stood reluctantly, closing her notebook. Thanks for talking to me, she told Matthew. I'll do my best to figure out what's going on here. Matthew gave her a small nod. Be careful, he said softly. There are people watching. People who don't want me talking. As Rachel left the cell, those words replayed in her mind. People who don't want me talking. Who were these people, and what were they afraid of? Back upstairs, the courthouse was still buzzing with activity. Reporters huddled together, comparing notes and speculating about Matthew's motives. Some dismissed his behavior as a publicity stunt, while others wondered if there was truth to his claims. Rachel kept her thoughts to herself, knowing she needed more evidence before sharing her findings. Later that evening, she sat at her desk, staring at her notes. Matthew's story was wild, unbelievable even, yet something about it felt real. She decided to dig deeper, starting with his background. If he really had been abducted, or if he believed he had, there might be records of strange occurrences linked to him. Disappearances, unexplained events, anything unusual. Her search led her to old news articles and police reports. To her surprise, she found patterns emerging. Towns where Matthew had lived temporarily often reported bizarre incidents, power outages, missing persons, and sightings of unidentified flying objects. None of it was conclusive proof, but it was enough to make her wonder. Meanwhile, Judge Grayson found herself unable to shake the memory of Matthew's words. That night she reviewed the security footage from the courtroom, hoping to find some clue that would explain his behavior. What she saw sent a chill down her spine. During the moment, Matthew refused to stand. Faint distortions rippled across the frame, almost imperceptibly altering the image. It looked like interference, but not the kind caused by faulty equipment. Judge Grayson sat back, rubbing her temples. Was it possible Matthew was telling the truth? If so, what did that mean for everyone involved? And what should she do next? Rachel's investigation continued into the early hours of the morning. By the time she finally went to bed, her mind was racing with possibilities. Whoever Matthew Carter was, one thing was clear: he was hiding something big. And whatever it was, it had the potential to change everything. The next morning, Rachel woke up feeling restless. Her mind kept returning to Matthew's story and the strange patterns she'd uncovered during her research. Something about it didn't add up, or maybe it added up too well. She needed help, making sense of it all, but who could she turn to? This wasn't the kind of case you could take to just anyone. It required someone with expertise in areas most people wouldn't even consider real. That's when she remembered Dr. Alan Peters. A reclusive astrophysicist who lived on the outskirts of town, Dr. Peters had spent decades studying advanced theories about extraterrestrial life. His work was controversial, often dismissed by mainstream scientists, but Rachel knew he might be the only person willing to entertain the idea that Matthew's claims were more than just fantasy. She drove out to his house later that day, winding through quiet country roads until she reached a modest brick home surrounded by tall trees. The front yard was overgrown and the porch sagged slightly under the weight of years. Rachel knocked hesitantly, unsure if anyone would answer. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a wiry man in his late 60s with silver hair and thick glasses perched on his nose. He wore a faded sweater and slippers, looking every bit the eccentric scientist. "Dr. Peters?" Rachel asked, holding out her hand. "I'm Rachel Meyer. I'm a journalist covering a unique situation. I was hoping you might have some insight." Dr. Peters squinted at her suspiciously before stepping aside to let her in. Inside, his house was a maze of clutter. Shelves crammed with books, tables piled high with papers, and computers humming softly in every corner. A large chalkboard dominated one wall, covered in equations and sketches of what looked like alien spacecraft. "What kind of unique situation are we talking about?" he asked, settling into a chair behind his desk. Rachel took a deep breath and began explaining everything she'd learned so far. Matthew's refusal to stand, his cryptic statements in court, the distortions in the security footage, and the strange events linked to his past. As she spoke, Dr. Peters listened intently, occasionally nodding or jotting down notes. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Absolutely fascinating." "You believe him?" Rachel asked, surprised by his reaction. "I didn't say that," Dr. Peters replied, "but I've spent my entire career exploring the possibility of intelligent extraterrestrial life. If your account is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt you, then this could be one of the most significant cases I've ever encountered." He turned to his computer and pulled up the courthouse footage Rachel had shared with him. Together, they watched the clip where Matthew refused to stand. Sure enough, the faint distortions were visible, rippling across the frame like heat waves. "On a summer road, this interference," Dr. Peters said, pointing to the screen. "It's not natural, not caused by faulty equipment or poor lighting. It's consistent with phenomena I've theorized about for years. Signs of interaction between our reality and something else." "Something else?" Rachel echoed. "You mean aliens?" Dr. Peters nodded. "Possibly. Or perhaps beings from another dimension, entities capable of manipulating matter and perception. They're not bound by the same physical laws we are." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. "So you think Matthew really was abducted? That he's been changed, somehow?" "It's plausible," Dr. Peters admitted. "If these entities wanted to study humanity, as many researchers suspect, they might choose individuals like Matthew as subjects. Abduct them, alter them, then return them to observe their behavior." "But why now?" Rachel pressed. Why did Matthew decide to expose himself in court? That's the question, isn't it? Dr. Peters mused. Maybe it was accidental. Maybe he slipped up without realizing it. Or maybe there's a larger purpose, a message he's trying to send. Rachel scribbled furiously in her notebook, her thoughts racing. If Dr. Peters was right, then Matthew wasn't just some random defendant. He was part of a much bigger mystery, one that could rewrite everything humans thought they knew about the universe. As the afternoon wore on, Rachel and Dr. Peters dove deeper into the evidence. They reviewed police reports, news articles, and testimonies from towns where Matthew had lived. Each piece of information seemed to point toward the same conclusion. Wherever Matthew went, strange things happened. Power grids failed. People vanished without explanation, and witnesses reported seeing lights in the sky. Dr. Peters became increasingly excited as he connected the dots. "This isn't coincidence," he declared. "These incidents align perfectly with patterns observed during suspected extraterrestrial encounters. It's almost as if Matthew's presence triggers ripple effects." Ripple effects. The phrase stuck with Rachel. Was Matthew some kind of catalyst, unintentionally drawing attention or danger to the places he visited? And if so, what did that mean for the people around him? Before leaving, Rachel asked Dr. Peters one last question. "If Matthew's telling the truth, how do we prove it? How do we show the world what's really going on?" Dr. Peters smiled faintly. "We start small," he said. "Gather concrete evidence. Test his claims scientifically. But tread carefully. Miss Meyer, if there are others watching, if Matthew's right about being monitored, then we're playing a dangerous game." Rachel thanked him and headed back to town, her mind buzzing with possibilities. She knew she couldn't tackle this alone. She needed allies, resources, and a plan. But first, she needed to talk to Matthew again. Later that evening, Rachel returned to the courthouse hoping to arrange another meeting with him. This time, Officer Peterson refused to cooperate. "No exceptions," he said firmly. "Not after yesterday." Frustrated but undeterred, Rachel decided to try a different approach. She called Judge Grayson's chambers, posing as a concerned citizen eager to understand the situation. To her surprise, the judge agreed to see her the following morning. When Rachel arrived at the courthouse, Judge Grayson greeted her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Miss Meyer," she said, gesturing for her to sit. "What brings you here?" Rachel hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Your Honor, I know this case has raised a lot of questions. Questions the public deserves answers to. I believe Matthew Carter may hold important information, not just about himself, but about larger issues." Judge Grayson studied her closely, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed. "I'll admit Mr. Carter's behavior has left me unsettled. There's something unnatural about him. Something I can't quite explain." Rachel nodded. "I've spoken to experts who share your concerns. Experts who think Matthew's story might be true, or at least worth investigating further." For a long moment, Judge Grayson said nothing. Then she stood, walking to the window and gazing out at the cloudy sky. "All right," she said finally. "I'll allow you limited access to interview him again, but under strict supervision. And if anything unusual happens, the deal is off." "Thank you, Your Honor," Rachel said, relief washing over her. "You won't regret this." As she left the courthouse, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping onto a path she couldn't turn back from. Whatever secrets Matthew Carter carried, they were only beginning to surface, and somewhere unseen eyes continued to watch. Rachel's second interview with Matthew took place under strict supervision in a small conference room at the courthouse. Judge Grayson had insisted on being present, along with 2 bailiffs stationed near the door. The air was tense, thick, with unspoken questions and suspicions. Despite the scrutiny, Matthew seemed unfazed, his calm demeanor unchanged from their first meeting. "All right, Mr. Carter," Rachel began, flipping open her notebook. "Let's start with what you told me before. You said standing would activate something within you. Can you explain more about that?" Matthew hesitated, glancing briefly at Judge Grayson before speaking. "It's not easy to describe," he admitted. "But when I stand, my body undergoes changes that aren't human. Standing makes those changes visible and dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Rachel pressed. "Are we talking physical danger or something else?" "Both," Matthew replied. "The last time it happened, people got hurt. That's why I've avoided it ever since." Judge Grayson leaned forward, her brow furrowing. "Mr. Carter, if what you're saying is true, then we need proof, evidence we can examine. Otherwise, this remains nothing more than speculation." Matthew nodded slowly. "I understand, but proving it won't be simple. It requires specialized tools, equipment most people don't have access to." Rachel exchanged a glance with the judge. This was new information. "What kind of equipment?" she asked. "Something capable of detecting energy signatures," Matthew explained. "The same technology used to track extraterrestrial signals. If you can find someone with access to that, they might be able to verify my claims." The mention of extraterrestrial signals caught everyone off guard. Judge Grayson sat back, her expression troubled, while Rachel jotted down notes furiously. She already knew one person who might be able to help, Dr. Alan Peters. But convincing him to get involved further would require more than just words. It would require trust. After the interview ended, Rachel wasted no time reaching out to Dr. Peters. Together they discussed Matthew's request, weighing the risks and possibilities. Reluctantly, Dr. Peters agreed to assist, provided they could secure permission to conduct tests under controlled conditions. Meanwhile, Rachel continued her investigation, following leads that hinted at larger forces at play. One anonymous tip led her to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. According to the source, the building contained evidence of advanced surveillance systems designed to monitor individuals like Matthew. Intrigued and slightly apprehensive, Rachel decided to investigate. The warehouse was eerie, its vast interior shrouded in shadows. Moonlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating dusty machinery and tangled wires. As Rachel stepped inside, her flashlight beam swept across the room, revealing rows of monitors displaying static-filled screens and cryptic data streams. At the center of the space stood a massive device resembling a satellite dish, its surface covered in blinking lights and intricate circuitry. "What is all this?" Rachel muttered to herself, moving closer to examine the equipment. Her footsteps echoed softly against the concrete floor, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Behind her, a voice startled her. "Careful, you don't want to touch anything." She spun around, heart racing, to see Matthew standing in the doorway. His face was partially obscured by shadow, but his tone was calm, almost soothing. "How did you know I'd be here?" she demanded. "I didn't," Matthew replied, stepping forward. "But I suspected someone might lead you to this place. Whoever's been monitoring me knows you're asking questions, and they're getting nervous." Rachel frowned, lowering her flashlight. "Who are they? And why are they watching? You?" Matthew shook his head. "I wish I could tell you. All I know is that they've been tracking me for years. Every move I make, every word I say, it's all recorded, analyzed. Sometimes I wonder if they're waiting for me to slip up, to reveal too much." As Rachel listened, her gaze drifted back to the equipment surrounding them. It was clear now that this wasn't just random junk. It was part of a sophisticated operation. Someone, or something, was using this warehouse to spy on Matthew. And possibly others like him. "This changes everything," Rachel said finally, turning to face Matthew. "If we can prove this setup exists, if we can link it to your story, we'll have solid evidence to back your claims." Matthew nodded, though his expression remained guarded. "Just remember, exposing the truth comes with consequences, for me, for you, for everyone." Rachel understood the gravity of the situation, but she also knew they couldn't stop now. With Dr. Peters' help, they arranged to bring portable scanning devices to the courthouse for a live demonstration during Matthew's next hearing. The goal was simple: to show Judge Grayson and the public that Matthew's claims weren't baseless, that there was something extraordinary about him. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Reporters, scientists, and curious spectators packed the benches, eager to witness whatever unfolded. Even Judge Grayson seemed unusually tense, clutching her gavel tightly as she presided over the proceedings. When Matthew took the stand, the room fell silent. Dr. Peters approached cautiously, carrying a handheld scanner connected to a laptop. He explained the device's purpose to detect anomalies in energy fields and proceeded to scan Matthew's body. The results appeared instantly on the screen, spikes and fluctuations unlike anything seen in ordinary humans. Whispers erupted throughout the courtroom as people tried to process what they were seeing. Some looked skeptical while others stared in awe. Matthew remained still, his expression neutral, as if he'd expected nothing less. Judge Grayson studied the readings, closely, her face pale. This is impossible," she murmured. "And yet, it's real," Dr. Peters confirmed. "Whatever Mr. Carter is, or has become, he's not entirely human." The revelation sent shockwaves through the crowd. Questions flew from every direction, demanding answers that no one could fully provide. Amid the chaos, Matthew locked eyes with Rachel. There was gratitude in his gaze, but also warning. They had taken the first step toward uncovering the truth, but the journey was far from over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Rachel, bombarding her with questions. She pushed through the crowd, her mind racing. Whatever secrets Matthew carried, they were only beginning to unravel. And somewhere, unseen eyes continued to watch. The courtroom was electric with tension as Dr. Alan Peters finished explaining the results of the live demonstration. On the laptop screen, jagged lines and spikes pulsed erratically, showing energy patterns that defied human biology. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, some gasping audibly while others exchanged wide-eyed glances. Even Judge Grayson, usually unflappable, seemed shaken as she stared at the data. "Your Honor," Dr. Peters said, addressing the judge directly, "these readings confirm what Mr. Carter has been saying. His physiology operates on principles we don't fully understand. It's unprecedented." Matthew remained still, his expression calm but watchful. He didn't flinch under the weight of hundreds of eyes fixed on him. Instead, he met each, gaze evenly, as if daring anyone to challenge the truth now laid bare before them. Judge Grayson adjusted her glasses, her voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside her. "Mr. Carter, this evidence raises serious questions, not just about you, but about humanity's place in the universe. Are you prepared to answer those questions openly?" Matthew nodded once. "I am, but I need protection, not just for myself, but for everyone here. If certain parties discover what's happening today, there could be consequences none of us are ready for." His words sent another ripple through the crowd. People whispered nervously, glancing over their shoulders, as if expecting someone or something to burst into the room. Rachel Meyer, seated near the front, felt a chill run down her spine. She had suspected Matthew's story was bigger than it seemed, but hearing him acknowledge potential threats made it feel terrifyingly real. Judge Grayson tapped her gavel lightly, calling for order. When the murmurs subsided, she turned back to Matthew. "If your claims are true and based on the evidence presented they appear credible, then you represent a matter of national, perhaps global significance. This court isn't equipped to handle such issues alone. However," she paused, weighing her next words carefully, "I will grant you temporary asylum under scientific supervision. We must proceed cautiously, ensuring transparency without compromising safety." The decision drew mixed reactions. Some applauded the judge's bold move, seeing it as a step toward understanding humanity's connection to the unknown. Others voiced outrage, accusing Matthew of being a threat or dismissing the entire situation as a hoax. Reporters scrambled to capture every detail, their cameras flashing like strobe lights. As the hearing concluded, Matthew was escorted out of the courtroom under heavy guard. Rachel followed close behind, determined to stay involved in whatever came next. Outside, a throng of reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Matthew ignored them, his focus unwavering as he climbed into a waiting vehicle. Later that evening, Rachel met with Dr. Peters in his cluttered office. They reviewed the day's events, discussing how to proceed. "This changes everything," Dr. Peters said, pacing back and forth. "We're not just dealing with one man. We're dealing with proof of extraterrestrial influence on Earth. Proof that's impossible to ignore." "But who else knows about this?" Rachel asked. "You think there are organizations watching Matthew? Governments? Something bigger?" Dr. Peters nodded grimly. "Almost certainly. Facilities like the warehouse you found suggest covert operations aimed at studying or controlling individuals like Matthew. If we push too hard, too fast, we risk drawing their attention." Rachel frowned, leaning back in her chair. "So what do we do? Keep quiet? Pretend nothing happened?" "No," Dr. Peters replied firmly. "But we need allies. People who can help us navigate this safely. Scientists, legal experts, maybe even whistleblowers willing to share classified information. And above all, we need to protect Matthew. He's our key to unlocking answers, but also our biggest vulnerability." Over the next few days, Rachel threw herself into building a network of trusted contacts. She reached out to colleagues in journalism, researchers specializing in UFO phenomena, and lawyers experienced in high-profile cases. Each new connection brought fresh insights and fresh risks. Meanwhile, Matthew remained under constant surveillance, relocated to a secure facility where teams of scientists monitored his condition. One night, as Rachel sat alone in her apartment reviewing documents, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was anonymous, containing only a single line. "Be careful who you trust." Her heart sank. Had someone already infiltrated their group? Or was this a warning from within whatever shadowy organization had been tracking Matthew all along? The following morning, Rachel shared the message with Dr. Peters. He frowned deeply, rubbing his temples. "It confirms what we feared," he said. "We're being watched. Every move we make is being analyzed." Despite the danger, neither Rachel nor Dr. Peters considered backing down. They knew they were treading dangerous ground, but the stakes were too high to turn back. Humanity stood on the brink of discovering truths that could redefine its existence, and Matthew Carter held the key. In the weeks that followed, public interest in the case exploded. Debates raged across news outlets and social media platforms, with opinions divided between fear and fascination. Some called for immediate action against Matthew, labeling him a threat to national security. Others argued he was a messenger, offering humanity a chance to expand its understanding of the cosmos. Amid the chaos, Rachel continued her work, documenting every development while striving to keep Matthew's identity shielded from exploitation. She visited him regularly at the secure facility, finding solace in their conversations. Despite the scrutiny and pressure, Matthew remained remarkably composed, often reassuring her that they were doing the right thing, even if the path ahead was uncertain. "You've done more than anyone else would have," he told her during one visit. "Not many people would risk everything for the truth." Rachel smiled faintly. Truth matters, especially when it's this big. As autumn gave way to winter, the world waited anxiously for the next chapter in Matthew's story. Governments began issuing cryptic statements, hinting at knowledge of extraterrestrial activity without providing specifics. Scientists debated whether humanity was ready to face the implications of such revelations. And somewhere, unseen forces continued to observe, waiting to see how far humanity would go in pursuit of answers. For Rachel, the journey had become personal. What started as a routine assignment had transformed into a quest for understanding, a quest that challenged everything she thought she knew about life, the universe, and her place within it. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. The truth wasn't just out there, it was closer than anyone realized.